Hello, I'm Don Nelson from Rhode Island, and I have a single comb Rhode Island Red hen, large fowl, here. I got started with these birds in 1990 because, well, they're the state bird of Rhode Island, and at the time I was the superintendent of what was the state fair. It wasn't the official state fair then, but I was the poultry superintendent, and the Rhode Island Red is the state bird of Rhode Island, and we didn't have any at the fair. So I called a friend of mine, Warren Carlo, also from Rhode Island, and he has the Reds, and I asked him for a pair so we could exhibit them at the fair so people could see the state bird. And I kept that trio that I got from him, showed them at some of the Connecticut fairs, and at the end of the fair season, in the end of September, we sold them. And the following spring, my wife and I both decided that we really missed the crow of that big Rhode Island Red. We had Bantam Rhode Island Reds at the time and Bantam White Leghorns, but we missed that nice, deep, strong crow of the big Rhode Island Reds. So another call went to Warren, and well, we had a trio of Rhode Island Reds to get started with. Did really well with them at the shows, and Warren helped me tremendously, and I was very fortunate to have Dick G., who was originally a commercial breeder and show with Rhode Island Reds. He had showbirds and commercial when they were the same birds back in the 40s. And he came and helped teach me how to breed Reds and taught me what to look for. And I kind of always bred them that way. And the more you read about Rhode Island Reds, the more confused you'll be, because it seems everybody has a different opinion on how to breed them. The best way is by trial and error. Well, when you're breeding Rhode Island Reds or selecting your first breeders, the most important thing, as with any breed, is making sure the bird has the correct type or the shape. This bird, she has pretty good type. Of course, it doesn't look great in the holding her, but if you saw her on the ground, you want a nice, the distinctive characteristic of a Rhode Island Red compared to any other breed is a long flat back. You want a long flat back and just a 10% rise to the tail. So you want to see a long flat back and then just a little rise to the tail. 10% on a female, 20% on a male. You want a deep breast. The thing you'll hear most often about Rhode Island Reds is they're brick shaped. They should be long and flat, deep breast to get the rectangle part of the Rhode Island Red, and you want the same bottom line to make that brick shape. And that's the most important thing, is having that right shape. That's what distinguishes a Red from a Rock or a Giant or the other breeds. That's their distinctive quality, is the long flat back and the brick type shaped body. The challenge in breeding Reds is getting the color correct. It's basically it's a black-tail red color, but it's similar to Colombian. You want to have that even red, good dark red color, but it needs to be even. You don't want splotchy. You want the standard calls for an evenness of shade is more important than the actual depth of the shade. So she is pretty even in color, as you can see. The challenge is with the color is they should have a solid black tail. It's very difficult to keep that in the females for some reason. They tend to go red a little bit, especially with age. Then you need the black in the primaries. You want to see red on one side of the quill, black on the other side of the quill, and then a red edging. And the opposite on the secondaries. Where she doesn't have great secondary color, she's a hen, they tend to lose that a little bit. You want the same thing. You want red on one side, black on the opposite from the primaries. The females should have a black necklace, just black tipping on the lower neck feathers. The males, you want no black in the males' hackles. So that's a little bit of a challenge. Keeping the color balanced is very difficult. Keeping that little black in the female, none in the male. Keeping the solid black tail in the female, and the correct wing markings. It's not an easy color to breed. It's very challenging. If you like a challenge, Reds are a great challenge. Seems like when you're breeding them, you're either going forwards or backwards. If you get a good one, the next year you'll be challenged to get another good one. It seems you're either improving something at one point and then you detracting from another point when you breed them. So it's a real challenge, but when you get a really good one, it's an outstanding chicken, and you can do really well at a show with a good quality Rhode Island Red. The other issue you have with them is feather quality. Hers is not too bad. She's a little stringy in the cushion area towards the tail. She's getting a little dry here just from being outside in the sun and the dryness. You'll find that reds need to be wiped or misted occasionally, even at a show, because any amount of breeze or dryness in the air will start to dry those feathers and curl them. The worse the feather quality is, the worse that'll become. But it also seems the darker the red, the worse the feather quality becomes. So it's a balancing act to keep that good dark red, but not lose the feather quality. That's just another challenge. You talk to anybody that's ever bred them, and they'll tell you the same thing. It's a challenging breed to keep the color right and keep the feather quality good too. As far as raising young and what to expect or what to strive for, they're a dual-purpose bird, so they should be. I strive to get them laying by at least 6 months. When I first started with them, most of them didn't lay till they're 8 or 9 months old. I did improve that to 5.5 to 6 months they lay now. And you want to see the males. They won't finish out in feather probably till they're about 24 weeks, 25 weeks before they're almost finished out. And they pretty much should be up to weight by then. They're not a real fast-growing breed, but they're not a slow-growing breed either. Most of the males are ready to show at 8 or 9 months. They're in pretty good shape, and the females at about 6 or 7 months. So they're not a long time to raise them, if you want to show. But you'll notice when the chicks grow quickly, and when they get to the teenage, that I like to call the gawky teenage stage, at about 3.5 to 4 months, is when they will put the most weight on, and they eat tremendous amounts of food. When they reach full size, they don't eat as much as some other large fowl. I don't think they even eat much more than the Bantam Rhode Island Reds do. They're a very docile breed for the most part. They're very calm. I hear people say all the time, oh, Rhode Island Red roosters are very aggressive. Some of the egg strains, the production type reds, can be very aggressive. I've raised hundreds of these birds for 20 years, and I only ever had one male that was aggressive. And he didn't pass it on. So my birds have always been, even the males, I have had a 4-year-old granddaughter that would go in the pen with them, never had an issue. The females will follow you around the yard like puppy dogs. They're a really docile breed. Well, as far as raising birds, getting ready for the breeding season, I always gave the birds a good quality feed, and I always fed them scratch. In the beginning, I had trouble with my males with longevity, and doing some research, I added wheat to the feed, and that seemed to help fix that. And all I ever fed was pretty much a 16 to 18% quality layer or game bird breeder pellet, whatever was available. Fresh water every day. I mean, that's a big thing. Clean, fresh food, clean, fresh water all the time. It takes a while to get them in breeding season. I used to breed my birds, put the breeding pens together the end of January, start collecting eggs the first part of February. Now I'm in Rhode Island. It can be very cold. It can be snowy. My barn is not heated. My barn has no lights. So by just coincidence of the conditions I raised them under, the birds that I reproduced every year were the birds that were laying without artificial light in the middle of February. So over a period of time, I produced birds that laid well in February just by accident. And that, I've tried raising them earlier, I've tried raising them later. My best birds always were the birds hatched from the end of February to the end of March. I tried hatching them late, they don't grow the same. I tried hatching them early, and the ones that are even a month younger, they catch up. Easy. Yeah, I know. And that's what always worked for me. And that gets the birds ready, the females for the fall show, not always the males. The cockerels will be ready for, our big show in New England is the Congress show in January. I always had cockerels ready for then. As far as ages, I did not have the facilities where I could keep a lot of birds over the winter. So I generally tended to use one cockbird and 1 or 2 cockerels. I tried to have 3 breeding pens every year. I really only had the facilities to keep 12 or 15 large fowl over the winter. So I generally bred trios or maybe 4 females to a male. And I did use cockerels, a lot of people don't. I didn't have that luxury of being able to keep a lot of extra birds so to set up breeding pens. So I kept the best I had and the limited amount of space I could use, and it worked out well for me. And the other thing with raising them, separate the males from the females as soon as you can. It's one breed that you can keep the males together till they're almost full grown. They don't fight, they're very docile. As long as there's not a female in the pen, the males get along really well. If they seem to be tussling a little bit, I used to put an old cockbird in with them. And that tames the young boys right down. He kind of sets the rules and everybody gets along. It's probably the best advice I could give is, you know, don't raise more than you have room for and give them a chance to grow. It's important with these birds. In the beginning, I raised them in small 8 by 12 outside enclosures. And then I did let the, we had a rather large, was a little horse paddock, and I let the weeds grow. And I started letting the reds out there in like a 20 by 40 foot pen. And the growth rate was way better, the feather quality was way better. And the main thing about a Rhode Island Red is let them get rained on. If they don't get rained on, the feather quality is never right. For some reason, they need that wetness and they don't mind being out in the rain. So I always let the young birds stay out in the rain. And I was told that, let them get rained on, it's good for the feather quality. And I always did, and it seemed to work for me, so. All right, when you're getting ready to breed birds, to me, breeding has always been about balance. If you have a weak trait in one bird, on the other side of the mating, you want that to be a strong point. The size of the bird, of the breeders, that the size and the frame came more from the female side, and the color and the perfection of the color came more from the male side of the matings. So that's the way I've always bred my birds. If you want to keep the males big, good size, you need to have good sized females. Some people believe that a little bit of gray undercolor and the smut in the undercolor is a thing to look for. Dick taught me no, that don't use that. And so I never did. I just kind of always bred them the way he thought they should be bred. But there's a lot of different schools of thought, and it's not an easy breed. And as with breeding anything, you don't want to enhance your faults. You try to balance what the males lack, you try to put into on the female side of the breeding, and vice versa. It's not always easy. There's always concessions. I have a male right now that is really good black in the tail, but he also has black in his hackle, which you don't want in the male. But you have to give way sometimes that, well, that might be a problem here. It'll fix this problem, but now I have another problem to deal with. And that's when you have a party colored bird, that's always an issue. And you have to balance the quality of the color with the quality of the type. Type is more important than the color, but when you're breeding a color bird, you have to take the color into consideration. Like we were always taught, one of the old timers, you'll hear it from a lot of people, that you can't paint the barn until you build it. So you have to have, the bird has to be right. That's the important thing. The frame and the shape of the bird has to be correct. And then you try to fix the color. As far as weight on the bird and size, it's a difficult question. A Rhode Island Red bird, it's a basically medium-sized bird, but weight is not a definite factor because weight has to relate to the size of the bird. A bird that's the correct weight, but it's a small frame bird and it's fat, is not good. Neither is a bird that's the right weight, but it's a big, skinny, tall, gawky thing. The weight has to be in relation to the type of the breed. So if the bird is correctly typed and the weight is spread evenly, that's the correct weight when the type is right. My belief is that the standards were written with the weights to make the birds more effective for what they were originally designed for. They're supposed to be a dual-purpose breed. If you get the birds bigger than they're supposed to be, the fertility suffers and the egg-laying ability suffers. Meat and egg production from a Rhode Island Red, like I said, they originally were developed as a dual-purpose breed. They should lay well. I mean, they did very well when the show birds were the commercial birds. They always did well in the commercial laying contests, and they still should. Some people don't focus on that as much. I always did, by accident in the beginning maybe, but when they start laying, they lay, and they pretty much lay an egg every day. They're very good layers, even in the bad weather. Like I said, I never had lights on them, and they laid in February. And we don't have long days in February in Rhode Island, but they laid, and once they start laying in February, they lay right through the summer till they molt. And they'll pick up again. Some of the older birds, they won't pick up again till the days get longer at the end of February. But as far as meat, I have eaten the extra males. I generally grew them out to about 24 weeks, and the birds that I dressed out all dressed at about 4.5 to 5 pounds dressed weight, which is pretty consistent with a cockerel weight at 7.5 pounds. So, and the quality of the meat is very good. We did them, we roasted them in the oven, or even I did some 2-year-old birds and put them in the crock pot with some wine and some spaghetti sauce and cook them all day till the meat falls off the bone, and it makes for a great dinner. As far as health problems in reds, if you have good quality stock and they get good feed and they have good living conditions, they very seldom get sick. They're good hardy chicken. They do well in the hot weather. From talking to people down south, they do good in the cold weather. The males will frostbite in the cold of the winter, the northern winters, without some protection. The females, I've never had a problem with that. They don't generally tend to get a very big comb. The only problem I encountered when I first started, like I said before, about the males not living to be 2 years old. They would be very prone to heart attacks. And I did some research, and most of the feeds don't have some of the B vitamins in them, which is available in wheat or wheat germ oil, and I started giving them wheat in a scratch feed every afternoon, and it changed. Whether it was the wheat, whether it was coincidence, I don't know. But that was the problem I faced. As far as that, they do tend to sometimes get raspy. I don't know, it's not a sickness. A little Vetorex usually clears it right up. But other than that, they're a pretty hardy bird. They're usually very healthy. If you take care of them, they take pretty good care of themselves. As far as the breed goes itself, and acquiring birds or getting information, the Rhode Island Red Club of America has been one of the active and at times one of the largest breed clubs in the United States. They go back way back to the 20s. They were a huge club back in the early years when these were probably the most worldwide known birds, as far as, you know, before the commercial industry came about. Rhode Island Reds were, and still are, produced in every country in the world. The Rhode Island Red Club has always been a good source for information and a good source for breeders. By and large, great group of people. The people change over the years. I've belonged to the Red Club since the mid-1980s. I'm a member of the Rhode Island Red Club Hall of Fame. I've been a district director for the club, and there's always been good people in the club that'll help people out. There's almost always good quality birds available. The numbers are down right now, especially in the rose comb variety. There's not a lot of breeders out there breeding the rose comb varieties for some reason. They never were as popular, and they still are not as popular. The single comb has always been the more dominant of the two varieties. But the Red Club has lots of information. You can go online, and there is articles about Rhode Island Reds available everywhere. But the more you read, the more confused you become, because what one person writes is the gospel truth. The other person will say, oh, don't do that. So it's kind of what works for you, and trial and error and a little bit of luck goes a long way to breeding good ones.